On today's show, Michael Marzocco of Stars and Sticks joins me as we talk about the Capitals and how they got extinguished quickly in the playoffs. We'll talk about Alex Ovechkin, what moves Brian McClellan should make this summer, and will the Capitals be any better in the fall? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, Michael Marzocco of Stars and Sticks joins me as we talk about the Capitals and how they got extinguished quickly in the playoffs and what went wrong there. A little bit later, we'll talk about Alex Ovechkin and his bumpy ride with the Capitals. A little bit later, we will talk about Spencer Carberry's first year behind the bench. And then to close out the show, we'll talk about what moves should Brian McClellan make this summer. So here is my talk with Michael Marzocco. All right, in today's episode of Locked On Capitals, we have Michael Marzocco of Stars and Sticks. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dan, how's it going?
It's good. It's been too long. I appreciate you coming back on the show here. I guess the best place to start here is the Capitals doing the unthinkable and making it to the playoffs, but then they got eliminated in 4 games. Now that we're a bit more removed from all of that, in your assessment, what went wrong?
I think what went wrong was the Rangers were just better and a faster team. I've been watching their games on, ESPN Plus app, and they were just amazing all season long. Laviolette, credit to him where it's due. He coached them really well and had them prepared, unlike, last night's result, which I'm sure you talked about or are going to talk about too.
Yeah, and it's crazy when we look at it in the past season and how the Capitals actually were able to sneak into the playoffs. Just a couple months earlier, it seemed like they were labeled for dead in cellars at the deadline, but then they did the unthinkable. They won 3 games in a row. They actually had to win the last game to even qualify for the playoffs. And you take a look at it, them sneaking into the playoffs. Do you think that this is something that that they're going to try to change in the off season, or how do they get a different result next season so we don't make it to the playoffs and suffer a similar result?
I think building through the draft, building through the success of what's going on in Hershey, I thought it was pretty cool that the Caps clinched in Philly, and the fact that Ovechkin and Oshie combined to win that game. A lot of people said they didn't deserve to make the playoffs. I'm a believer in the power of friendship, and I almost teared up. I was pretty happy when they made it. So,
I mean, the biggest question for me is, did the Capitals get lucky? I mean, what do they say? Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So did the Capitals, did they get lucky by making it in there, considering that they got extinguished in 4 games? We know about Alex Ovechkin and how he was pretty much not a part of the equation. Talk to me here briefly about Alex Ovechkin, and we'll talk about him a little bit more in depth, but let's talk about him in the playoffs. How he was non-existent. And I know that the New York Rangers were prepared. They had him covered, double covered. When he did get shots in, they were shot wide. And then there were points where it seemed like he was disinterested. And they made mention of that on ESPN, where he was kind of hanging around the half wall there, kind of waiting for things to happen to him. What was wrong with Alex Ovechkin in the playoffs?
I think it was just burnout. He's not getting younger, which is the sad part. But at the same time, you and I have been watching Ovechkin since he was a rookie. And we both know not to bet against Ovechkin. But seeing him come, invisible in the playoffs, like you said, kind of like a passenger. Like you said, Laviolette did a good job. And I think just the way they were all doubling up on him just made it. I think it was just the father time and the burnout. And it's going to be an interesting storyline next season for sure.
Yeah, because that's the tough question is how to proceed in the future. How do they avoid getting eliminated in 4 games? Pretty frustrating, I guess, for me. I had kind of hoped that they were going to be able to find a way to sneak out 1 game, but it just seems like they weren't able to get any traction whatsoever. But then again, it seems like the Hurricanes, they suffered the same fate. I do think that the Panthers will be a formidable opponent for the Rangers, that is for sure. But taking a look here at Alex Ovechkin, just his season in general. Alex Ovechkin got off to his slowest start through the first 43 games of the season, just with 8 goals, and then with a 30, and then he ended up finishing up the season with 31 goals. So taking a look at it, it was an up and down ride. Got off to his slowest start in the goal scoring department, was contributing, getting assists, that kind of thing. And then he went to Dubai on the All-Star break, came back and said he was a changed man. He was refreshed, and seeing is believing. And I was skeptical, but he proved me wrong. He proved a lot of different people wrong, and went on a tear. So talk to me about Alex Ovechkin during the season. What was behind his slow start? Was it Spencer Carberry's systems? Was it just him not being well prepared? What was behind Ovi's slow start in your estimation? All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about Alex Ovechkin and his lack of chemistry with some of the centers that he played with on this team, and what moves Brian McClellan should make this summer. I'll discuss straight ahead. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that is the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. We streamline hiring with powerful tools that find your matched candidates. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed US data. So if you are someone that's involved in the hiring and firing and just everything that is involved in the workplace as far as HR is concerned, you need Indeed. So start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your post at Indeed.com/locked on. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/locked on. One more time, Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. You need Indeed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team Every day, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
My estimation was, I think, just the pressure of being in your late 30s and being, the captain and having a lot of responsibility, not just to, the Capitals, but to, he's popular in Russia too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's a tough thing about it. And there was a lot of people saying that, what is behind this? He's washed, all of that. And then there were the believers on the team. There was Tom Wilson. There was John Carlson saying, never doubt the big man. And I guess that was a lesson to all of us, myself included, to never doubt him, because when you count him out, that is when he's going to prove everyone wrong. So they were talking to Alex Ovechkin on breakdown day, and they said that he had spoke to his trainer already, and that he was planning a summer a bit different. Do you think that it was part of his training regimen this past summer that put him up in a bad position? It was on one of his pieces on ESPN saying that he likes to eat a lot of pasta, and he actually has Coca-Cola in his water bottle. I know that if I ate a diet like that, I would be much bigger. I know he burns off a lot of calories. Do you think training had anything to do with it, or ultimately what was behind Alex Ovechkin's overall problems?
I think it's definitely training combined with eating. And I still struggle with the nutrition part as well. Like, it's difficult. But if I had the Ovi diet, and I'm talking old school in his prime, yeah, I'd be bigger. But I like how he changed it up with the Subway diet, foot long, and the bag of Cheetos, and definitely a Coca-Cola in there for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting. His wife said that he can kind of eat whatever he wants to, just based on the fact that he burns off the calories. But there was more at stake. And ultimately, it has been said that Ovi cares about catching Gretzky, but he would like to win one more cup. Let's talk here about Alex Ovechkin's chase of Wayne Gretzky, talking about 853 career goals, 41 shy of tying Wayne Gretzky's record of 894. Do you think he gets it done under his current contract, or do you think it will require an extension?
I think he gets it done under his current contract. The question is, does he get it done when he's 39 or when he's 40? And that's a scary question to even think about. Yet here we are.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing. And in one interview, he had actually said that, listen, that's important to the fans. It's important to a lot of other people. He kind of insinuated that, him catching Gretzky is important, but it's not the most important. And I don't know if that's just a way of kind of, deflecting all the questions, because every time there's a press conference, it was, hey, when are you going to catch Gretzky? And I think to a certain extent, he was like, okay, enough. If I play really great hockey for the Caps, that will just come naturally. I'll score a lot of goals and I'll catch it, but I don't want to be laser focused on Gretzky. That ultimately, I think that he would like to win another cup while he's still here. I don't think it's going to be easy, but it's going to be difficult. And, taking a look at his struggles, I talked about his struggles to start the season really slow. But one of the things that he said on breakdown day that was interesting was that there was a lack of chemistry with his center. For many years, it was Nick Backstrom, and then it was Kuznetsov. Well, we know that Nick Backstrom stepped away from hockey indefinitely. We know Kuzi got dealt out to Carolina. So it was, a lot of different centers. It was Strome, it was McMichael, it was, even Dowd here and there. Talk to me on your opinions on the lack of chemistry with centers, and how big of a role do you think that played in his slow start?
I think it played a major role. I think you and I both saw the RMNB translated stories of what Kuznetsov said, and following Ovechkin for years, Ovechkin and Kuznetsov, they're like brothers. And when you lose a brother, when your brother gets traded or when your brother moves away, it's painful. Or when your coworker takes another job or something like that, it's painful. It's like a breakup. So I think Ovechkin going through that mentally was also a big factor in the slow start, because that stuff was getting out there, and it was just kind of a nightmare, just stuff. Kuzi basically said in English he didn't want to be here.
Yeah, and it was a good story about Kuznetsov, wasn't it? That he did chip in and get some goals in the playoffs. Ultimately, I'm happy for him. I know that he went into the players' assistance program, but I'm happy for Evgeny Kuznetsov, the man, and the hockey player. At the end of the day, I know that he faced struggles, but we all face struggles in life. And ultimately, I hope his career takes off. I really do. Taking a look at it here. We talked about the lineup shakeups. There was a lot of players that were injured in and out of the lineup. A lot of things that I don't think Spencer Carberry had planned for. The season was kind of sketched out with Backstrom and Kuzi and these different players on the team, and then injuries and those kind of things reared their ugly head. So the question is the promises made to Alex Ovechkin. I talked about that on my most recent podcast here, and it was brought up in the Daily Faceoff. Frank Saravalli was talking about, don't expect any big changes from the Capitals this summer, that there were promises made to Alex Ovechkin that he would play on a competitive team. And, I always look at it and I would say to myself, was last season a competitive team? At the trade deadline, there was the feeling that the Capitals waved the white flag as you saw the departures of Mantha and Edmundson, and they didn't make any real key additions. Were the Capitals competitive last year? And should we adhere to that promise that Brian McClellan made to Alex Ovechkin? I know that you had spoke about this in Stars and Sticks, about that this team shouldn't blow it all up. Talk to me a little bit about your piece. I know you wrote something on that in Stars and Sticks, and what posture should the Capitals take between now and the start of next season?
That was actually CJ that wrote that. And
Okay.
But I was nodding my head and agreeing with it, in the fact that they need to get younger and get faster, but maybe there's a way to do it in-house. So I've always had, the glass half full type thing. But yes, I have admitted, even before the trade deadline, that they needed to sell off, because it was frustrating. It was weird watching. It was kind of confusing because you weren't sure which team you were going to get each night.
All right. So coming up here after the break, we will talk about free agents, restricted free agents, and unrestricted free agents on the Capitals. Which players will most likely be back and which ones could be on the move? I'll discuss straight ahead. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's winner take all in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. And say you're watching the NBA playoffs. Say you're going and you're watching a Nationals game and you're not that into it. Well, I have just the cure. Open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game, and all of a sudden the game is that much more exciting. So that's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Yeah, it was a tough question about what team was going to show up, what team was going to be present, and my biggest fear is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. Are the Capitals, are the fans, is Brian McClellan insane to think that this team will get a different result next year if we go in as is. I know that there was things said by Brian McClellan that he wants to see a whole lot more from Connor McMichael, Hendrik Lapierre, but we saw how they got worked over heartily by the New York Rangers. It wasn't even close. They need that top six forward. Brian McClellan has spoke about that for the last, I don't know, couple years here, saying, I need this top six forward. And at this point, for me, it's just lip service. And I don't even ultimately think that a singular top six forwards are going to get it done. I think they need a couple upper echelon players and maybe a really dynamic center to have some chemistry with Alex Ovechkin. What kind of big moves, and do you have your eyes on any top six forwards that might potentially be out there, either via free agency or trade?
I'm still processing, player report cards, player grades. So I haven't quite thought about, what the salary cap looks like or who the cap should go for. I have been on capfriendly.com. I know who the free agents are. I have a feeling and a hunch that McMichael might get some kind of bridge deal to kind of prove himself. But I just hope if they were to send away McMichael or Lapierre, at least get something decent in return. No Forsberg for ERAT crap or anything.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think Capitals fans will ever get over. There are some intriguing names out there. Mitch Marner is one of them. Steven Stamkos, I didn't check today, but he was close to signing a new deal with Tampa. That would be an intriguing name. I don't know. It doesn't really go in the direction of getting younger and faster, but the guy can put up goals. I do think that they need a dynamic goal scorer. I think that, as much as I hate to say it, I would entertain the thought of moving a McMichael or a Lapierre if it was for the greater good. If there's one of the things that we see about the Washington Nationals is they're going to be good in next year. Oh, check that next year. Well, they got to be good 2 to 3 years from now. I think it's a frustrating posture to take for Capitals fans. Sometimes you can do it the right way. You take a look at what the New York Rangers did a couple of years ago, where they sent a letter out to all the season ticket holders and said, hold on to your seats here. It's going to be a rough ride, but we're going to be the better for it. And look at, they won the President's Trophy this past year. How severe should Brian McClellan get with a rebuild? And do we ultimately have to wait until Alex Ovechkin hangs up the skates?
I say, because Ovechkin, knowing him, seeing the documentaries, following his career, just the drive that he has a drive similar to Kobe Bryant. So I don't see a full rebuild. I say go for the home run and get Stamkos, because Ovechkin, Stamkos, and Strome, together, that's a three-headed monster. And that could even scare a team like the Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing, just being that we're talking about the Rangers, because the Capitals played them there in the first round somewhat recently, and it was a tough opponent. Make no mistake about it. If we take a look at the unrestricted free agents on the team, and there's kind of nothing burgers in my estimation, Max Pacioretty and Nicholas Aube-Kubel. Max Pacioretty was the guy 2 times, had the Achilles issue 6 different times, put up 30 goals. And at the end of the day, I think was a mentor for a lot of the younger players. And Nicholas Aube-Kubel, we saw glimpses of greatness. We saw him on the fourth line. And then the restricted free agents, Connor McMichael, Beck Malenstein, and Mitchell Gibson. You spoke there earlier about Connor McMichael, but Beck Malenstein playing a huge role on the fourth line for the Capitals with Nick Dowd. So it is interesting. How serious should the Capitals get on bringing back Connor McMichael, Beck Malenstein, and Mitchell Gibson? So I understand they're restricted free agents, but should they try to sign extensions for all 3 of those players?
At the very least, McMichael and Malenstein. Malenstein really impressed me a lot this season. I think out of all the young bucks, he impressed me the most besides McMichael and Lapierre. And the thing about Malenstein, he has just a good shot to him and a good finish, like that one goal against the Golden Knights. where it was the breakaway. That was just beautiful execution.
Yeah, the one thing I like about Malenstein in particular is he has a bit of snarl to his game, and he's not afraid of laying in front of a puck. He's not afraid of doing whatever it takes to get a jersey on a night in and night out basis, and he has been pretty clutch for the Capitals. So talking about the defense and the blue line in particular, that is something I think that needs to be addressed as well. You saw situations where John Carlson was playing up to 30 minutes per game. He never complains, but that's not optimal for him. That's just asking for some sort of injury from him. We saw how the Capitals struggled this season before when he took the puck off the head there in Winnipeg. So what kind of how should they address the blue line? I mean, we have Trevor Van Riemsdyk, we have Rasmus Sandin, those kind of players, Nick Jensen. If I'm going to have a knee-jerk reaction, I would say that Jensen and TVR would be two players, I guess. If they moved them out, I wouldn't be super bummed about. And we saw how Alex Alexiev played a bigger role as well. And that's just considering that we have Vinny Iorio, those kind of players in the wings. How do you think the Capitals and Brian McClellan should address the blue line?
I'd say trade one or the other, but don't trade both of them, because we saw how not having Nick Jensen impacted the Capitals against the Rangers.
Yeah, that was a big thing, wasn't it, there in the playoffs? And sometimes you take these players for granted. And Rasmus Sandin, if we remember, he was the guy that they got the season before. He is a part of the future along with Martin Feravari. And we thought for a while Ethan Bear, even though we don't really know, that kind of evaporated there. I guess we haven't seen a bigger sample size. So you don't think that there's any other big pieces that need to move on the blue line? All things considered, I'm pretty happy with it. I think that goal scoring is the thing that needs to be addressed more than anything. But for you, the blue line, maybe a tinker with it a little bit here, or do you think it's pretty good?
I'd say tinker with it just a tad. Tinker with it just a tad, because like you said, there's a lot of guys like Vinny Iorio coming up in the wings and several other Bears that I think can shore it up.
All right. I want to thank Michael Marzocco for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals. Again, you can find his work at starsandsticks.com. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel, available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holney, and I'll talk to you again next time.